Here we go. Glad to have my friends Scott and Jenny Graham on.
So good to be
You
here.
guys are the owners of Carefrontations,
Yep.
which is a family support system that involves interventions and family groups and processes for residential treatment centers. And you guys also are a big advocate for family dynamics, and
We sure
are
are.
experts in that field. And I'm excited to have you guys on because a lot of family members listen to this podcast and are wondering what to do, and whether they know it or not, need help for themselves as well.
Yeah.
For people that have loved ones that are struggling with either addiction or mental health. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, we're
Our
excited
pleasure.
to be
Yeah.
here for sure.
Yeah.
We're all fighting the same thing here. You know.
Love it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just get a little background, and like, you guys have been married how many years?
39 in May.
Yeah.
39.
Yeah. Met married in 20 days. She met me in the middle of my mess.
So yeah, and I know a little bit about your story, Scott, but
Yeah.
like, give me like a little like
Okay.
over like the 2-3 minute blurb of
Yeah, I can do that.
your journey.
Yeah, well, I was back in the 80s. I was an LA County Sheriff's deputy, worked undercover in vice narcotics out of West Hollywood. So I was having too much fun, actually, and but loved my job. I loved getting the bad guys and getting the drugs off the street. But I was going through personal issues with. I was married for 7 years before Jenny and I met, and my personal life was imploding. Not exploding, you wouldn't know it just looking at me, but imploding for sure. 2 small kids. And I got too deep undercover, just kind of sucked into the culture, and before I knew it, I was, self-medicating, and legally, but then all of a sudden it became illegal, where if I stopped you on the street and you were a nice guy, which you are, I didn't want to take you to jail, and you didn't want to go to jail, so we just did a little deal, and I let you go, and I was happy, you were happy, and I had this little system going until, well, it worked until it didn't. For about a year I was doing that, and then I ended up getting arrested while on duty, made ABC, NBC, CBS. It was national news. And long story short, I was looking at 6 years in prison.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so it was surreal. It was the very first time in my life that I had a serious consequence, where I used to get away with everything and anything, and this was the big time, for sure. And so that's when I met Jenny, and it was the Mother's Day. We were up in Calabasas, the Sagebrush Cantina. I was just drinking margaritas with a buddy, just kind of not doing anything but just hanging out. And
Yeah.
that's when Jenny and a friend popped up, and
Fate has it.
Yeah.
He walked by, I thought, okay. And then he walked back by, and I thought, okay. And then he walked back by, and he looked at me. He says, hey, I know this sounds like a line, but can I sit down for 5 minutes and talk to you?
There
And I
you
looked
go.
at my friend, and I pointed at my watch, and she nodded. And so I tapped my watch and looked at Scott and said, go. And he sat right down, and he started talking, and he talked up that 5 minutes.
You
and
timed him.
I did, but I didn't interrupt him. And I waited a few months before I became the official interrupter.
You are an
interjector.
expert, yes.
But it went 5 hours, literally.
Okay.
Like I had never met a man as talkative as him.
Yeah.
And it could have been the cocaine that he was still feeling the residue from being
Yeah.
up all night. So
And so, Scott, you were in your active addiction when you guys met.
yes.
I was.
And
yes.
you had already been arrested. And
I'd been arrested, and
do you mind if I ask you about that specific story and what happened?
Well, yeah, I was. There was people that were calling the station, which is a norm, saying, "Hey, you got cops that are doing X, Y, and Z," and they kind of take it with a grain of salt. But they had gotten a number of calls, so their interest was piqued a little bit. But I had arrested a guy. He had 5 ounces of cocaine, and he had an attitude, so I took him to jail. But I didn't book 5.5 ounces. I only booked 1 and kept 4.5. We go to court about 6 months later, and he told his attorney that, hey, I had 5.5 ounces, not 1. Attorney went to the judge. Judge thought, okay, their testimony wasn't totally corroborating, and then they went to the department, and that's when the investigation started. And I knew we were being followed. I knew something was up. I mean, I just knew it.
There was a we. You had a partner.
I had a
in this.
partner,
Okay.
yeah, and it's like a Miami Vice thing. I kid you not. He's a Creole guy, good-looking guy. We were three days apart in age. Just we were out there. Just we were kind of the golden boys. We were taking more people to jail than anybody, and letting half of them go, and so people left us alone. And so they split us up, put us back together to see if we would start that activity again. And the major narcotic unit, who we were good friends with, we'd go on major busts with, and drink with them at the station after shift was over. We were friends. They were the ones investigating us. And like I said, I knew that something was up. And what happened on the day that we get arrested, this gal walks down the street. We'd gone to a coffee shop where we typically do before we start our shift, and we walk out, and this lady walks up with this briefcase in her hand and says, "Hey, excuse me, there was a guy talking on the phone when there was phone booths back in the day, and he got off the phone real quick and got in his Mercedes and sped off, and he left his briefcase in the phone booth." It's like, okay, found property, just go down the street, they'll take that. And she persisted, and it's like, all right. So I got all her information, which was bogus, and I knew it, so I knew something was up. And so we sent her on her way, and we get into our car and opened up the briefcase, and there's 3 ounces of hermetically sealed cocaine in there, $500, family pictures, a Colombian passport. It's like, okay, this is a dealer's briefcase if I ever did see one. It's like, I know we look stupid, but I'm not that stupid. Take it to the station, and we go to the major narcotic unit and say, hey, this is what happens. You guys want to take the coke and go ahead and book it in? They're like, no, you guys go ahead and do it. They're thinking we'll do something with it. So we go to our car. We weren't doing our report writing in the briefing room like that's where you normally do it. We were so removed and isolated. We just went back to our car. And I know I'm getting set up. Okay, I know it. And I kid you not, I'm already folding a paper bindle to see if I can cut the corner of that hermetically sealed cocaine, take a lighter and light it back up.
So you're getting fed. And you're getting set up, but you're showing your addiction. You're like, I got to get some of this, right?
Of it, yeah. And right then, before I even cut the corner, I get a loudspeaker notice, come to report to the sergeant's office. And so I said, my buddy, just stay here. I'll go check it out. Walked into the station. As soon as I walk in, going towards the sergeant's office, I get swooped on by 6 of my colleagues, ripped my gun out of my, holster and hands me on the back, and I'm playing stupid, like, what the hell's going on here? And I knew exactly what was going on, and so I get escorted into the captain's office, and then I hear my partner's name called over the loudspeaker. It's like, the same thing happened to him, and we spent the night in jail, and it was right from that moment. It was awful. I mean, obviously, I felt guilty, ashamed, humiliated. People who I'd gone through the academy with and drill instructors. I was the guide on in my academy of 176 guys where I carried the flag, which is a real honor to be asked to do that. So, I've always been a leader in sports and work and all of that, and to have them come in and just not even say anything and just shake their head, it's just like, it's just awful. But I got out the next day, and the first thing I did was I had stashed some marijuana down my golf bag, and I went and grabbed it and smoked a joint first thing. So my addiction was still in charge. Yeah. And so yeah, I continued to use, and so yeah, it was just I was in limbo. I was in absolute limbo, and that's when I met Jenny, and we were. It was what I needed. That's why we're such strong family advocates. It's like I needed somebody beyond me to be the reason to get back in the game of life. Yeah. I wasn't enough. I mean, I wasn't suicidal. Like if you asked me, do you want to kill yourself? I'd say no, absolutely not. But my behavior indicated I didn't really care if I lived or died. And so when Jenny came in, it was like, I was excited. I was nervous. I didn't know what it would be, because here I'm facing 6 years in prison, and she's in financial services, got her act together, great family and everything, and I would be the last person she would want to get close to, let alone marry 20 days later. And yet...
So you got married 20 days after that?
20 days after that.
We did. We actually had planned a wedding. Well, first we got engaged. So like a weekend, it was clear, like we were talking every single day, that kind of a thing. And he left me a poem. So how romantic is that? Back in the days when you had a phone machine, and I thought, okay, I feel a proposal.
On the answer machine at the house that you played with, right?
You push play, yeah. I knew a proposal was coming. He didn't leave it on the phone machine, so he had some tact. But yeah, we were out at a coffee shop, and he goes, oh gosh, And we so first he proposed. We planned a wedding 6 months later, as much as you can plan a wedding, saying, yeah, let's wait till the court case clears, and then we'll get married. So absolutely no planning other than the date and waiting until the court case.
When did you find out, like when you guys had that conversation, that he had a court case?
So he didn't tell me any of this during the 5 hours at the cantina.
Okay.
So I just went through the regular drill that I go through, which is, do you have any kids?
Right.
What are your spiritual beliefs? Like just trying to figure out. what was what, because I had a vision board. So I'd been clean and sober for 4.5 years.
Okay,
And
so
I had a
you're
very clear.
sober as well. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So I had a very clear vision board, like literally with pictures that I cut out. And I absolutely wanted to marry someone who was short, stocky, those green eyes, that brown hair, tan, more freckles than me, so that, well, never mind, I'll leave that part out. And 2 blonde children, the exact size that his 2 children were. So
Okay.
he had a 4-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So we're talking preschool, kindergarten. And that was part of my vision. I need to marry a man with 2 little kids, that the kids speaking complete sentences, they can communicate, and they're out of diapers, and this is what the guy looks like. And then all the personality traits, he had to be incredibly bold and have leadership, because I always rolled over guys kind of like a, Mack truck. And I needed someone stronger than myself, because I would always get bored with men who were weaker than myself. So he was checking all the boxes, like everything about him. He whips out his wallet. He's got the pictures of the kids, and they're adorable. They're just, should grow up and be on the cover of a magazine. Beautiful blonde children, beautiful to this day. And yeah, so no clue about it. We did get one little thing cleared up, and that was that he was working stripping. So when he was working the
Let me back up. So let me.
It's an important piece to the story. It's a very important piece to the story.
I'm gonna let you guys run.
Before you share
Okay.
that. So I didn't know if she wanted me to share this, but so I get out of jail the first night I was in jail, and all my girlfriends were strippers, high end, if there's such a thing, where husbands would bring their wives to the body shop and on Sunset Strip, and
which was part of the 2-mile radius that he worked on.
I was
Sunset
friends
Strip.
with a few of them, and actually a couple of them were boyfriend girlfriend for a while, that kind of a thing. And so they said when I got out, like, "What are you going to do?" And it's like, I have no clue. I mean, I can't go get a job. I had a swimming pool cleaning business back in the 70s. I could go do that, I guess. I didn't want to. And they said, "Well, why don't you come to work with us?" And it's like, well, I mean, what, like a bouncer? I mean, I'm 5'7". I mean, I can take care of myself. I know that, but bouncers need to be like your size, big.
Sure.
And they, no, dance. It's like, oh, really? It's like, well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's like, we'll get you the gigs. You just show up, and it's like, okay, let's do that. And so I had the most amazing time. It was so much fun, because I had made a vow, though, too, that I wasn't going to be promiscuous, because I just didn't want to go in that area. So it was kind of empowering to like say, no, thank you, let's just have fun. And then everybody's guard went down. It was fun, because there was no sexual stuff going on there other than just having fun, dancing, and that kind of a thing.
So was this at a club, or you go to like bachelorette parties?
All of
or
it.
the whole
I went
thing?
to clubs, went to restaurants, went to private homes, you name it. That was my gig. I'd go dance 3 songs, come out with $300, and it's like, all right, let's go get a gram of Coke.
Yeah.
That was my mentality. I'd lost a house up in the desert. I'm living at my mom's house in my old bedroom kind of a thing, and it's just like totally regression. But it began because of the court case. I didn't have the motivation to really get back in the game. So
Well, and to your credit, I mean, they would decide continuance to such and such a date. Like, you never knew.
They were getting-
because once I got involved with him, I was going to those continuances, and it was like,
They
you would
didn't.
just have-
They were trying to
so
get the
you're-
media attention off, because it was
Right,
newspaper,
right. Let it all
radio,
die
TV
down.
here and there, but
Yeah.
mostly that. So now back to Jenny, and I told her that I was dancing, and it didn't really throw you.
So, no, it didn't. Not a bit. It was exciting news, to be sure. So the bottom line
So
was.
Jenny, you have a little bit of
back
that,
to-
like you like a little bit of bad boy kind of thing.
I was
maybe?
a professional dancer also on the
Oh,
Sunset
okay.
Strip.
Okay. So,
So,
Belly dancing.
but I was a classy dancer because I
Okay.
was a belly dancer.
Okay.
So I worked at the Kavkaz, which is the restaurant that became, what did it become? Spagos. Yeah. So I worked clubs, parties, popped out of boxes.
So you knew it already.
Oh,
Yeah.
No. So we're
Wasn't
so,
intimidating.
this was a problem, because you tell that to somebody who you just meet, and they have a problem with that, because I've danced on tabletops, just belly dancing, mind you, but where they clear all the, and then you're going up and down the table and all this kind of stuff, and so this freaks most people out.
Yeah.
And so when
Didn't
he
faze
told
you.
me, it was just like, oh, good,
But
all right, I'm not going to phase this guy. This is going to all
But
work
what's so
out.
funny, she says, "Oh, I'm having a bachelorette party for my sister, and I've got no entertainment.
Next
Can I
week.
hire you?
Like 7 days,
Like,
6 days after we met.
I'll give you a discount for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and so obviously the funny story, I didn't know I was going to marry her 20 days later, but the first time
Right,
I meet my
right.
mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, all her cousins, I'm in a G-string dancing.
It was absolutely
There you
awesome.
go.
Yeah.
And so most of my conservative relatives that were turning white to pale gray, just completely shocked, except my mother, and then of course my sister, the bride to be, both grinning from ear to ear. And as soon as he left, my mom just took me aside and said, "Oh, he's perfect for you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're already sober.
So I'm already sober.
You know you quickly learn that he needs to be sober.
So I find that out the next night.
Okay.
Right, because it's noontime. If he was drinking a margarita, like he wasn't,
Mother's Day,
he
it was no
wasn't
big deal.
intoxicated. It was midday on Mother's Day. And so, like I said, we talked for 5 hours, and he needed to go because he was taking his mom out to dinner. And so
Well-
he's the one that broke off the
But
5-minute
what's
conversation.
so funny is getting back to, she knew I needed help. The next day when I wanted to, see her again, I had actually someone a party I danced at. This gal says, "Will you write my wedding vow for me?" It's like kind of poetic, I can do that. And it's like, yeah, I'd love to. So I wrote a little wedding vow and I give it to her, and she gives me a gram of Coke, barters. That's how she paid me. I go to Jenny to see her, and I'm thinking, great, we're gonna have a little fun, a little partying, and pull it out. And she, you want some? It's like, no.
No,
It's like, cool,
I
more
sure
for me.
don't. Yeah, yeah. And when I said no, he literally, like he said, he pulled it out. He pulled out the setup. He's chopping up his Coke, and I'm just sitting there going, "Well, this wasn't on my vision board, not so much." And I knew, it's like, okay, well, maybe we're just meant to be friends because this guy's a train wreck.
Yeah.
So.
And I was an emotional train wreck.
So what's the sobriety last day usually look like when you get sober?
Well, it wasn't right away. I mean, we met in May, and it was not until August that I really decided to lay it down. And I remember bargaining with God. It's like, okay, you want me to give this up? This has been my go-to. I've been, for all intents and purposes, pretty functional, even though that was the only job I've ever lost. Obviously, the stakes were pretty high, but other than that, I never missed work, that kind of a deal. My relationship suffered, but it's like, okay, you want me to give this up? I need like a tenfold increase on good. And of course, I found out it's just unsurmountable the benefit of stepping into sobriety. So we had 9 months. I had 9 months of sober time before I finally got sentenced, and I thought I was going to get probation. We ended up getting married because we had a counseling session, a premarital counseling session, and we thought it was kind of a joke. And
Well, we didn't think it was a joke.
well, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
We didn't get to meet with a counselor. We just got to fill out forms and
Gotcha.
Answer a bajillion questions. And
Gotcha.
while we were out, right after that appointment, grabbing a cup of coffee, he goes, "I'd marry you tomorrow." And I said, "I'm busy, but I'll fit it in on Friday."
Oh, wow.
So from Monday, and then we eloped up that Friday. So it was very spur of the moment. Because again,
She hadn't even met the kids yet.
This is still May. We met and married all in the month of May. So I still hadn't met his kids. We had already agreed, because he'd already proposed that, which is why we were in the counseling appointment, that I wanted to wait and see what shook out with the court case, because he thought he was going to get probation. He had the best attorney in Los Angeles.
All my retirement went to
had
it,
an
yeah.
incredible track record, hadn't lost any cases with a first responder. And I know in my spirit, it's like, you're going to go do time. I so know it.
I remember having a vision too of seeing one of those jail buses going over an overpass.
Yeah.
It was a dream. It's like, oh boy, that's me.
So you get sentenced.
I got sentenced. I pled guilty because I knew I was guilty, and for us to move on, I really felt like we both felt we needed to do that.
And that was a process, because I met you in May and you were still pleading not guilty all the way until October. And then in October, I came to him, he came to me, and we almost said in unison, "I have something important to tell you." And we both had the same thing to say to each other, and that's
So anyway,
time to change the plea to guilty and face the music.
We had got a new apartment the day before, thinking again, hoping probation. But the judge, it was interesting. He said, I've never ever gone to other judges to ask their opinion on a case that I've had ever. And I went to 2 other judges because I can see that through the probation report, which recommended straight probation, all the, letters of recommendation that you provided.
The new life you started.
She's 6 months pregnant, by the way, at that point in time.
Oh, wow.
And he says, but we can't allow this to happen. We cannot send that message to the community that this is okay. So he did give me low term, so which is 2 years. And they took me right then and there. We had a district attorney that really did not like me. And I wasn't a flight risk, but he presented it as if I was. So they
Right.
took me right then and there,
Yeah.
handcuffed, and didn't even say goodbye to her.
Right.
And it was quite the image to see her, like, just like in shock and like 6 months pregnant. And my mom, my dad, my two real close friends who were pastors there. It was tough. It was my one and only panic attack I've ever had, sitting in that room,
Yeah.
waiting to get
Yeah.
processed. And my first night in jail, and while processing at LA County Jail for about 2.5 weeks before I went to Chino, was in the cell next to Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Oh, wow.
That's who I was. We didn't converse or anything because we're both like in metal cells that are, no windows.
So not
or
with
anything.
bars,
Yeah.
Right.
just with a big heavy door and a little skinny window.
So you get sentenced, and you're a police officer, which is
So I'm in protective custody.
so you're in you go straight to protective custody. Does that mean like you're by yourself?
Well, I was in a room with 4 other people at that particular, like 2.5 week processing time. There was like
Who also needed protection.
Yeah, and so it's 23 hours in this room and 1 hour out up on the roof. Then I got over to Chino, and then I'm in my own cell. There's like 3 tiers of cells, noisy, cold.
Now it looks like the movies.
It was
Just like in the
insane. It
movies.
was like an insane asylum, is what it felt like.
Yeah.
So I was there for 2.5 months, and our son was born during that time, and there's a story in that,
Yeah.
too. It's just
So many layers to the
Yeah, there
story.
really is a ton of layers. But I got sent to a California men's colony up in San Luis Obispo, where I did the remainder of my time, fires for a whole summer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
You
did
did the
fire
force?
camp. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which was great. I didn't need it for money or anything, but I was just to do something.
Great to be outside.
It was great, and God used me in a lot of different situations. It was the hardest year of my life. So I ended up doing 13 months total, that 2-year sentence, and then another like 13 months on parole. And it was the hardest time, yet the richest time, because I just dove back into my faith. We courted during that time, where we'd write letters every day, talk. Ultimately, had conjugal visits. Where it's really a love story, is what
It's
it
amazing.
what it is, and it's what sustained us, because life wasn't easy after that either. There were different times where we had some tough moments, seasons, and that foundation really got us
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the start of the journey.
Yeah. Well, so to bring it back to, this industry, this business, Care Frontations,
Yeah.
I'm out. My parole officer wanted me to go talk he's teaching a college course, a criminal justice course. And he said, I want you to come tell your story. It's like, okay, whatever you want me to do. And that kind of got me into, it's like I'd never told my story before. And so I was looking at cars, and this guy walks up to me up in Ventura, big, huge, like weightlifting guy, nice guy and everything, but he knew nothing about cars. I mean, I knew it immediately. And I said, you haven't been doing this very long, have you? And he goes, no, about 6 months. I said, well, what'd you used to do? And he goes, oh, I was a police officer in Port Hueneme. I said, oh, really? LA County Sheriff, why aren't you a cop anymore? And he's like, well, got into steroids. I was a weightlifter, turned into cocaine, stole $35,000 of cocaine at an evidence locker.
Told your story too.
Yeah, it's like, no kid, me too, And where he went to treatment and got probation, and I didn't. And so he was already talking at schools and civic organizations and whatnot, and doing interventions, which I didn't even know what an intervention was at that point. And so I just fell in love with the whole concept, and we became close friends. We're still friends to this day. He lives up in Ojai, and he does investigative work. That's really his passion. Where I never wanted to be a cop. I mean, I just wanted to get a job that had benefits and retirement. And nevertheless, we started Care Frontations, and then Jenny, who was like running the books, and I went back to school at the University of Santa Barbara to do their advanced, drug and alcohol certificate program. So to have a little bit of, cred behind just being an ex-cop who fell from grace and all that. And so we wanted to get Jenny involved because we were losing cases for women. And this was a little bit later on too, because I was teaching, when we moved up to Washington, I was teaching at a college, the drug and alcohol counseling certification courses. And so I just had her become my student, and She took the coursework as well.
So that's what you did. You guys moved to Washington.
Yeah.
You got certified as a drug and alcohol
Well,
counselor. Right?
I think I had done 32 interventions so far in California. I was doing the DUI program
36.
up in Ventura, working some group work at some different hospitals, Charter Hospital, it's not there anymore, and intervention here and there. It's really hard to be an intervention, that be your own gig. It's just there's not enough phone work going on. It's like, it's tough.
And this was the 80s. So
Well,
it was a different.
Let me kind of like slow down a little bit on the intervention, because there's a lot of people that watch this show. They've seen the show Intervention, or maybe know what an intervention is.
Yeah.
What does an intervention look like? Like who calls for interventions? Like what does that mean? Like from a layman.
Well, you're so right. I think that we all know what the intervention, what that word means. You intervene, you interrupt, but a lot of people have this image that it's this big show, this big drama, this explosion. It can go well, it can not go well, and it really is counter to what we hear in the industry that says, unless you hit your own rock bottom and you do this thing called treatment for yourself and recovery for yourself, it won't work, which is completely counter to how an intervention really works.
Right.
Because when people are at their lowest point, they are not healthy enough to be the reason, just like I wasn't healthy enough to be the reason. So most interventions, they highlight what's wrong with the individual. And it's very logic driven, really, more than it is emotionally driven. And I love how you say it. If logic could have pulled them into the harbor, they would have pulled in a long time ago.
And gotten the help.
Yeah. So what
Right.
we decided to do was really shift our focus, and that would be wake up what's wrong, or wake up what's right in the person. The person that has all these wonderful gifts and talents, that they've been hijacked. And they have lost sight of who they are, and they're focused on what they are. And they think everybody in their world sees them the way that they see themselves. And that's just not true for most families. It's like, no, we can separate who they are from what they do. It gets harder as time goes on. But if we can effectively wake up the beauty in a person, they say yes to help. And we also had a real, in working in the treatment industry, so we both worked about 11 years total every single day in the treatment industry and doing interventions on the side, because there just wasn't enough to have that be our sole source of finances. And I never ever saw the emotional dynamic in treatment that we created in the intervention. It wasn't there. And it's like, we need more. Look at it this way, unless somebody has a real breakdown, like if we cry, there'll be no breakthrough without a breakdown. And there wasn't enough breaking down in the treatment, is what I saw. Yeah. And so nevertheless, we really wanted to give the treatment team information they otherwise would never get to help enhance the experience in treatment, because most people in treatment are kind of bored. And it's only because the treatment team doesn't have what they need to treat them effectively, because they're just relying on what they're telling them, the client, which is half-truth at best. And so, ironically, I think most therapists, they feel like their hands are tied, because they can't really get that corroborating information in time. Maybe they get it later on, but look at all that time that was wasted. So give them what they need. We wanted to help the family have a healthy voice so they could put closure to the past, because so many families, they hang on to the past and they just carry it with them. And the messaging for the client typically is, all I've ever been is all you're ever going to allow me to be. And it's like, we've got to break that cycle for sure too. And so we wanted people to walk through the doors of treatment with their head held high, with less shame and guilt than they woke up with. We wanted them to stay in treatment longer than they normally would have. And we want to affect the outcome studies, which are not real good. I mean, if you're a consumer and you look at, okay, if I spend this kind of money and this kind of time and my outcome percentage is what? Conservatively, maybe 20%, conservatively, that's kind of depressing. And that's not been our experience. I mean, we've done collectively over 2,000 interventions in 37 years, all over the country, outside of the country. We were doing 8 to 10 interventions a month in, month out. Finally, when we really got a reputation and we went national and all of that. And our phone number's been the same for over 30 years. People would call us and let us know if there was trouble. And we hardly ever get phone calls that report relapses. Yeah, we just don't get it. Great. And a lot of it is pointing people to the right programs, right? And helping families know what their role is and what they're supposed to do. But a healthy intervention is, what's interesting is you see the show. We've been asked to be on the show a number of times, and we have said thanks, but no thank you. Right. Because it's too drama-driven. And
there's a few reasons.
We set it up like a...
But we appreciate the free advertising.
Yeah.
It really, that part affected us because it did become more known.
Yeah.
That you could interrupt somebody ahead of time
Yeah.
because people are in this space where they're thinking, well, they have to be ready, and the intervention is the remedy, or really the answer for that. Because if we wait till they're ready, they might no longer be breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're always ahead of schedule in the sense that we're intervening when they're not ready.
Right.
And yet over 90% become ready through the process, and that's the missing
Yeah.
piece that I wish that
Right.
people who care about someone knew.
So there's really three categories here we're going to talk about. Number one is you guys do interventions, and I don't want to kind of explore that. Number two, you guys have a 2-day family program for people that are in treatment, whether that's mental health or substance use disorder.
Right.
And then number three, you guys have a free weekly family support group
Yes.
for people that are looking for knowledge, need a community.
For
need to
families
understand
only,
what's
right.
going on. And it's
Right.
for families, not
Right.
the loved ones,
Right.
and anybody can sign on to that.
Absolutely.
So-
And they can be in all
yeah.
three camps just to, on that family group. They can be wishing that their loved one was ready for help, or that they had the courage to, initiate, maybe asking. It's a lot of people who have someone under care in a treatment facility, but then it's a lot of people after that. And that's so unusual because any treatment center that's doing family work primarily is only doing one-to-one work. If they are doing group work, it's only while their loved one is in treatment. And so the idea that it has no expiration date, like we've had people for years, literally
Right.
for years, building notebooks, taking notes, because it's so different than now in a meeting.
So number one, take me through, if I'm a family member and I call you guys and I say I need help with an intervention.
Okay.
Take me through the process of what happens next. Like
Yeah,
we
it's-
we figure out a way for you to do an intervention on my loved one. What
Well-
happens, and what do those days ahead look like?
So they want to first build a team of people who are significant. So if I'm doing an intervention for you, your wife calls, I say, we got to build Team Chris.
Okay.
People who are significant to you, people that if they called you, you would come to the rescue, and vice versa. No questions asked.
People who you trust, people who won't sabotage what we're trying to do. So they need to be able to hold on to it.
Got it.
So numbers 5, 6 is a perfect number to try to put together. It's not an absolute. You can do it with just one person,
Okay.
and we've had as many as 13.
Got it.
It just kind of depends. So once
Right.
you've got your team assembled, then it's getting treatment secured. So you call the treatment center, make sure that your insurance is covered, or if it's private pay, you've got all the financials put together, and of course there's a bed date because everything revolves around that opening in treatment. And so once that's secured, you're just like, if you're the treatment center, you're waiting for me to call and say, Chris, they said yes, we're on our way. So they put that piece together. So we have a preparation day before the actual intervention day. And so people don't have to put anything together typically. We just show up at a location away from the person we're intervening on, so we're not getting interrupted from them. We're going to hunker down for about 6 hours. So 6 hours of preparation time. People go, 6 hours? That seems like a long time. It's like, no, you'll see it'll go by really fast.
Yeah.
And of course, people really realize how much there is to all the moving parts.
So much
So
to it.
that 6 hours is broken up into 3 segments. The first segment is an education orientation piece. We're introducing new language because we want to really all be speaking the same language as we move forward. And we're talking about how come we're doing what we're doing the way that we're doing it. And we're also talking about what we're not doing. We're not going to talk about the past. If we can all agree that, again, I'll use that Chris has a problem that's bigger than him and bigger than all of you. Can we agree on that? And they go, yeah, okay, we're not going to talk about the past at all then. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, because we're not going to beat you up over what's wrong. We're trying to wake up what's right.
Right.
And that's why having significant people who really know you can really speak into what they love about you.
And it's so interesting because, initially there's some chatting time before we get down to brass tacks, and they're still, so caught up in all the problems that brought them to the table. And it's just, it's that gentle reminder that the problems that brought you to the table are not the reason he's going to say yes. So take a deep breath, think about those things. There's going to be a system that we have in place so that you can do some cliff notes, and we're going to get that information to the treatment people who can spend the time unpacking that sort of thing.
Right.
But we just are on a mission here, and if we don't wake up, like you said, what's been hijacked, what's gone into hibernation, the part of you that they love, then I don't want to rush through that part You know, we don't want to hurry through that part because that's going to be the part in the letter that stops time, that stops his beating heart. And that's what we want.
So,
Time.
hour and a half, first segment of that 6 hours. 3 hours, we're going to help everybody write these amazing letters. We have an outline and a kind of other information that really helps people who are not good writers typically put together an amazing letter of love that's designed to be a roller coaster ride so that we can help break down those defenses that the person has built up, justifying and substantiating their unhealthy behavior. And so and there's an interview piece to that as well. So about 3 hours, and everybody's working collectively. So basically it's like, okay, we're all going to start writing. And say if Jenny's part of the team, it's like, okay, Jenny, I want to do an interview with you. It takes me about 10 minutes, and I go through the team, so it takes me about an hour to get through 6 people. The letter takes about an hour or 2 to write. So when people are done, they bring that letter back so we can edit it. So we're really just glorified English teachers is really what we are, because we want to help people put their truth down, not shrink back from it, articulate their emotions, their you know, what they perceive in a negative or positive way, in where they own it. This is what I think, this is what I see, this is what I envision, versus this is what will happen, thus saith me.
And again, just because that's all futuristic, and that's another real key component to what we do, because we're not talking about the past, we're talking about what we fear could happen going forward, as well as what we hope for going forward. And so for some reason, people are less, they don't close off and get as defensive when we're talking about what might happen,
Right.
what I can envision happening,
Right.
because these are both in the future.
Possibilities.
And wanting them not to be probabilities.
Right.
And so, you know, the bottom line is that all the letters feel like I'm just going to drop my guard and I'm going to lean in and I'm going to confide in you. And so the metaphorical finger that they've used to go like this is now just pointing at themselves, and it's my confiding in you that's so priceless. It's so precious.
Well, I want to get
And
to
then
that.
you can drop your defenses.
At the end, so you can kind of get a feel for what the intervention looks like. So letter writing, and in the last hour and a half, we do a role play, so they get a feel for what it feels like. And I tell you what, people who have never shed a tear before, people who are afraid to cry, there's something about reading these heartfelt letters that just opens up the floodgates. And so as they're reading their letter, they get the real life experience that I won't die or pass out. I can actually do this. And we develop the order in which they're going to share, and there's a strategy to that, again, breaking down those defenses. And then we're going to set up how do we get in front of them. So, I mean, all the logistics are put together. We know where we're going to treatment, how we're getting there, who's taking, all that's been dialed in. But now the intervention piece, so the next day we do the intervention. And I set this up the way I would if I was going to break a door down when I was a cop. So when I was a cop, I didn't go knock, knock, knock. Hey, Scott from the Sheriff's Department, want to come in and check you out. Let me know when you're ready. It's like, no, we surprised you. We just broke the door down, element of surprise. And people are so incredibly predictable. We think we're unique and special, and we are to a degree, but I mean, you put people in the same situation, you see the same thing unfolding. So we have the one we're going to intervene on be in a room with somebody from the team typically, or 2 people, it depends what the dynamic is, and they're going to be sitting down on the living room couch. And the rest of us are outside waiting for the text that says come. And when we get that, okay, we're ready, we just come walking in through that front door unannounced right into that living room. And people think, oh no, it's like, here's what happens. That person looks up and they're thinking, what's going on? Why is he here? All these questions are rapid firing, overloading the reasoning mind. And they come in, give them a hug and a kiss, sit down, sit down, sit down. And then I'm left standing there and it's like, well, who are you? And I'm capitalizing on that people are always on their best behavior when they're in front of somebody they've never met before. And then I overload their mind even more. I would say, hey, Chris, my name is Scott. It is so good to meet you. I've heard so many great things about you. I know this is a surprise, and I apologize for that. That's on me. But nevertheless, everybody here, they've asked me to help them put together some thoughts that they've had, and I've helped them write these amazing letters that they just want to read to you right now. So if you could be so kind to let them just read you their letters one after another without interrupting, and then we can talk a little bit when they're done. It'll take about a half an hour, all right? And I cannot remember when somebody said, no, that's not all right. They always go, okay. And they don't have a clue what I said. But all I've said is who I am, what we're going to do, what the rules were, and got their permission. Therefore, if they do interrupt, now that person can say, oh, well, let me finish. Remember, we're going to talk when we're done. And it quiets them right down. But now, picture this. When we were ready to read, we call the person, whoever's first, and we've got the order all dialed in. It's like, okay, go ahead and read your letter. That person, as everybody does, gets out of their chair, and they literally sit or kneel right at their feet. You know, you bend your knee, that means honor. You're lower, you're submissive. You're close enough where you can touch, physical touch. It takes all the fight, flight, or freeze response out of the equation. And then they hear these just amazing, I'm talking amazing letters of love that just would blow any listener, it would blow you away. You would want one of these for you before you die.
Right.
Because again, we're waking up. It's like if I was intervening on you, yeah, I'd say, I'm here because I'm really concerned, but my love for you is just like so strong. That's why I'm here. I mean, I really don't know what I can say, but I'm here because I'm your brother. And to be able to then say, Chris, this is why I love you, man. This is I'll just share with you all. Like if you died, this is what I would say at the funeral. I'd be telling everybody, this is why I'm going to miss this guy.
Right.
He was amazing, kind of a thing. A coach, touched thousands of people, kind of a thing. And because of my love for you and my adoration is so high, that's when we step into the future and go, but if you don't get the help that I think that you deserve, and I think need, here's what I think could happen. And I'm very dramatic, but true to my own sense. I mean, I could go as dramatic as saying, my worst fear is getting that call that you have died. And then to be at the funeral and see all these young kids you've touched and no longer be around anymore to maybe coach their kids,
Right.
I'd be devastated. But we end on a high note. We say, but with the right help and your commitment, this is the future I see for you. And I just lift you up and say, look at this amazing future. Don't you want that? And it's like, yeah, I want that. Because I've never met anybody who said, yeah, I started using so that I could, die prematurely, affect everybody I love, and lose all my purpose and meaning in life. It's like, no, we don't start that way. So to be able to give them an opportunity to go, this is what can be yours. It's like, give me that. I've always wanted that. I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so most people are like, yeah, I'm down for that. And most people say, it's so weird, I feel so relieved. It's like, not weird to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember sitting in the captain's office being railed, embarrassed, humiliated, but the strongest emotion I had was relief because the charade was finally over.
Yeah.
So, that's just, we've been on a crusade for 37 years to not have to allow people to hit a bottom.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times, I kid you not, over 2,000 interventions, 9 out of 10 times people say, okay, and
Right.
people are dumbfounded.
Right.
It usually is so easy. I jokingly say,
Which is really, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
It's really different than when you watch the show and they're all sitting around and they're saying, if you don't go to treatment, we're going to take this away. And
not that at all. Now, we have boundaries that we only say if we need to. So in the
Right.
letter, there's no threat, no conviction, condemnation.
And we have a different spin on boundaries in that we're all about, we're just going to take a temporary measure, gives you time to think about it. And so you think about it, if there's an emergency, if there's a fire or an earthquake, then we know which Red Cross is going to have some water, right, and a cot to sleep on if we've been evacuated. And this is the same kind of feel to it, like this is an emergency in our eyes, and so we're going to take a temporary stance,
Gotcha.
and we're going to do this and this and this. So again, the metaphorical pointer is not wagging its at them, it's
Yeah.
pointing at ourselves. We're going to do this for our own self-care as a temporary measure, and then as soon as you have any movement, and maybe there's a key person.
But only-
And so then they're left thinking about this, so that tiny percentage that's saying no thank you today, the typical thing is that they call within 48 hours. And so that's when you've got, an incredible turnaround. So we're really on a crusade to change how people, quote unquote, bottom line people. We don't even want to use that phrasing because of the ripple effect that you're saying you've seen on TV that we've seen.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in our work. How many times are we coming in and helping a family and they've said, wow, all this, from top to bottom, all of this is really different than the last interventionist and how they walked us through doing all of this. And it's like, well, that's why we take pride in keeping our phone number the same decade
Right.
after decade after decade, because we keep hearing back from people 20, 27, 28, 29 years later and hear these good reports, and it's because of doing the work in a way that it's always about how would I want it done unto me if I was in the hot seat. And so that's the guiding principle.
Yeah. Okay. We've got limited amount of time. I got so many more questions I want to ask. So
We can do this again.
yeah, no, but we got to dig into. I want to hear about
Family.
the family
Yeah,
process, and then I really want to dig into your weekly support group because
Cool.
that's something that is everybody can have access to that can sign on to Zoom. So let's talk about just what does the family process work?
So
Give
the
me
family-
like a 5-minute breakdown of the
Okay, I can
family
do that. I can
process.
do that quick
If
for
I'm
you.
in treatment and I'm going to your family 2-day group.
So this was
two-day
created
group.
and born out of our intervention work. So it's got the same 2-day process. It's got a letter writing component to it and an educational piece to it as well. And so, we sat on this idea for about 10 years, and we decided to recreate our outline for a recovery protection focus versus a go-to-treatment focus. And we needed the time to birth these concepts we wanted to share that were different than what people would hear in treatment, different than what you would hear in the rooms of support groups and whatnot. We wanted to do different. Again, because I'm a consumer, I look at, well, the outcomes aren't that great. It's like, let's not keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, because we know that we hear that's insanity. So let's try something different. So at first, we were going to work just with the families and then bring the clients in afterwards, and that gave birth to working with both the clients and the families together. That gave birth to working with even clients that didn't have family members there. And that gave birth to working in the mental health field as well, doing family programming. So we can do this family programming with any population, no matter what the dysfunction, because it's an emotional driven experience.
And I do want to interject, if I may, and backtrack to while we were pregnant with the idea for the 10 years, we kept testing it out privately, and it would be this amazing experience, and it was really perfect for a family that either needed the full amenity or they had too big of a group, and so they couldn't bring 13 people to the family program at the treatment center. They were limited to 2 or 3 or whatever that was, and so it wasn't like we were, experimenting once we got to be in the treatment center itself. But it was phenomenal because in the early years, 15 years ago, we might be part of a renowned treatment program that had, known doctors and other people doing the other segments to the programming, and then we would be getting this feedback that the emotional needle was moved, and my client came in like this, and now they're in, my arms. And it was often in the family program the only piece that had the client present, and the rest of it was more education driven for the families. So that morphed into doing family programs in the entirety for the whole treatment center.
So to give you a
that we're not
breakdown.
sharing that platform.
First day,
that.
the first half of the day is educationally driven. So we're wanting to give concepts that in recovery that work for both the families and for the clients, because there's a parallel recovery track for family members and the client that has the substance use or the mental health, untreated mental health disorder. It's really ironic how very similar they are. So we've got 5 different concepts that we share, and again, it's new information. We kind of like stretched it out like taffy. Jenny's more the creative than I am, but she's really helped me really think outside of the box to really help people with word pictures and different life experiences to really bring it home to people. And we're really just touching on the tip of the iceberg during the family program, quite frankly, because that's where our support group really comes into play. We kind of go even deeper dive into these concepts within the support group that we're doing. But nevertheless, first half hour, we're talking about concepts. The second part of the day, I take the client, or Jenny takes the clients, and one of us takes the families. We split the group, and we're helping them each write letters to each other. So different outline for the clients than for the families. And we're critiquing those letters as well. Not so much like an intervention where one word spoken poorly would cause everybody to spin sideways, but we still want to take a look at it so nobody's going to be putting their foot in their mouth. And so they do that, and we have a boundary setting statement as well there that we have families just take a look at and consider. Some other cooperating bits of information we put together. But then the second day is where we read letters like we do in the intervention, and it is just the most amazing experience to have these families get vulnerable and read to one another, just like at the intervention. And I mean, everybody's crying. Everybody is just, not uncontrollably weeping, but it's like you're in church kind of a thing where people are moved.
Right.
So,
and even if the treatment center has a tech taking notes, like the tech's always crying too. So it's like profound because it cuts through time. It stops the beating heart for just a moment. It's breathtaking how beautiful it is.
Yeah,
and the reconciliation that goes on is off the charts.
It's not a complicated process. It's just
not.
allowing people to, what we're trying to do, we're trying to create a safe place where people can be vulnerable, be brutally transparent and honest. And I think that we're gifted in doing that it's not a hard thing for us to do. And that's where that, warming people up to day one, and getting them to trust us and then helping them. And then day 2 comes, they're ripe, they're ready to dive deep. And the beauty of this is what happens is the clients, they become closer because they hear more about their comrade in treatment, and the families get closer too because they no longer feel alone, that they're all going through a shared experience.
Yeah.
And the therapist in treatment, oftentimes they'll say, what did you guys do this weekend? They're different. They're different now.
Right.
And because we also are giving the therapeutic team the letters, some other information that we would do like with intervention work that they're getting, so they're able to now go even deeper with their client than they would have if they didn't have the family program. Because I think that's the main thing is like we're believers in you. How can you heal what's hidden?
You can't.
You just can't.
You basically
So we want to
can't.
expose the things that they're not humiliating, they're not embarrassing, they're just things that we're all going
Can
through.
relate to.
Oh, totally.
Oh my gosh. And then I love that no client is left behind, that it is unheard of in this industry where someone that doesn't have a family member gets to participate in family. And gosh, when we started testing that out 10 years ago, it was like, oh, we've got to get to the clients that have no family. They almost need the family program more than everybody else does in their own lane, so to speak. But their feedback is as profound, and they feel like they get a surrogate, and they choose when it's their turn. Like maybe they'll choose one of us, maybe they'll choose a peer to read to, but they get every bit as much out of it as anybody who has a real relationship present.
Yeah, has a multiplying
So it's
effect.
pretty precious. It does have a multiplying effect.
Okay, so the third thing, and one of the most exciting things for me that you guys do, is you guys have a free family group weekly on Tuesday nights. It's at 6 o'clock, correct?
Correct. 6.
That's Pacific Coast time.
Yes, sir.
Right.
For anybody that has family members that are struggling with substance use disorder, alcoholism, mental health. First question I want to ask is, and I know that there's statistics around that people that are involved with their own recovery, their family members have a much greater chance of success of recovery.
Totally.
Tell me, I know that's true, but tell me more about that.
Well, you know, the families, we always say, get the short end of the stick in the whole recovery community if they even get the stick.
Right.
And they don't know what to do, what to say. They feel still overly responsible for the outcomes. There's still this trepidation in most families post-treatment when loved ones come home. So we also thought about, well, we don't want to replace Al-Anon. You know, that's another program. We're not trying to, you know,
Duplicate.
duplicate
Which is a great
that.
program.
It's a great program, great program. But we wanted to be strategy driven. We want to think about, okay, we all have a story. That's why we're here. But let's leave that story for when you're in therapy, or if you want to go to Al-Anon and share it. That's where it goes. So we want to think about how can we move forward, because we all want the same thing. We want to be connected to one another in a healthy way. We want to feel a level of purpose and meaning in our lives, and we just want to live as long as we can together, enjoy life, and have this experience be something we've learned from, not have it be a ball and chain that we carry the rest of
Right.
our life.
Right, so it's a 90-minute meeting. So we teach for the first half hour, and I'm literally going to say teach because we've had people that have come for years and are on their second 3-ring binder taking notes and pointing out, well, you said this 6 weeks ago, and it was my favorite thing, so I'm just saying it out loud to add to what
So we have a
what's
6-week
going on.
curriculum is what we have.
And the reason that we're not saying the same thing every time, so we're just bringing something fresh to the table, even
Every
though we're
time.
revolving the topics.
Yeah, I
But the
spend-
first 30 minutes, we teach, and they take notes, and they could also be having soup, or, you know.
Well, what I love about this is that, again, we've designed it for 6 weeks. Most people stay in treatment 30, 45 days around that period of time. But every 6th week, when we've got this topic that revolves around again, we
Right.
take some time to just like go through our
Rethink.
notes. What else can bubble up? It's like I want it to be new for the person. And like Jen said, I mean, we have people who've got 2, 3 years. We've been doing it for 4 years now. And they love that it's fresh and new. It's
And part of it's, they have ears to hear that they
They're
didn't
different, yeah.
initially, so there's a little bit of that
Yep.
as well. But after that half hour, and it feels like a podcast, and I'm interjecting, and we're just going back and forth on a topic, and after those 30 minutes, we keep them on the next 30 minutes on track with what we were teaching about. We want them to stay with their
Stay on topic.
reflection, their response, their question, their clarification that they need, all on that. And then oftentimes, because it's on such a roll, and maybe not everyone's, that wanted to speak did, we can continue on the topic, but they also know the rules for the last 30 minutes.
But what's unique about this too?
Which, just to finish it, the last 30 minutes.
Well, I want to stay with this second one too.
Okay.
I let people know that if you've got a question about treatment, we're going to always point you back to treatment. And we don't want to circumvent
Right.
anything that's going on
Yeah.
there. But we're completely comfortable with sharing, well, if I was in your shoes, I would consider this, or this is what I did when I was at that point in my journey. So, we don't tell people what to do, but we sure are comfortable saying, this is what's worked for us, this is what's worked for, others that we've helped
But it
along
keeps
the way.
it hypothetical
Yeah.
so that everyone there, it in some way, even if they have to shelf it for a while because it's not on the same timeline as them for where they're at with their situation, it's applicable.
So
and
go through
that's the key.
go
But
through
the last 30 minutes, they're allowed to go off topic was all I wanted to say.
Well, I want you to do the titles of
I know.
the six different
Yeah.
ones, so you
Yeah.
can get a feel
Yeah.
for that.
Love it.
So the first one is our recovery or their recovery with a big question mark because there's a lot of confusion
Right.
around that.
Right.
The second topic is my favorite. It's anger with the what, not the who.
Wow.
The third topic is codependency, interdependency, and independence. And what they're going to find out is that independence is overrated, codependency gets a bad rap, and that interdependency is the sweet spot. But we really sometimes we spend more time on codependency because, of course, it's unhealthy, the enmeshment, and there's a lot to unlearn, even maybe more than to learn about
Sure.
that, and so on and so forth. So that's the third topic. The next topic is loving them to life, ... or loving them to death.
Yeah.
Powerful topic.
Yeah.
And we're fickle. Now that's my favorite topic because that's the topic I'm teaching tonight,
And we do
right?
one on
We're passionate
boundaries.
about it. So then the next one after that is
Boundaries.
statements, family agreements, family contracts, how to write these, the language that we use. So we're real specific, and they're just eating up this information because left to their own devices, they're still opening their mouth and putting their foot in it. And so this is foot prevention in the mouth 101, and then 202, and then 5.6, and so on and so forth. And then the final topic after the boundary statements is what's now and what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're catchy, but again, we can unpack those things where it's relevant to what they're going through. Everybody can relate. And we had a guy who had been on for a couple of years, and he says, this is my first time I've spoken. And so, some people are on camera, off camera.
Right.
It's just,
I
but they
love that
keep
you
coming
brought
back.
that up because it makes it such a safe space. And so you've got the one that's just, it's so much less tension than going to an in-person meeting and everyone can see me. It's literally
So
no
it's
one
okay
can
just
see
to
me.
come to the family group,
Yes.
sign
Yeah.
on, turn your camera off,
Right.
and listen.
Totally.
Yes.
That's fine.
Totally.
Very unique.
And so, okay, last question. What is you guys' message to that family member that has somebody out there struggling and just doesn't know what to do, where to turn? They've read all this stuff online, maybe called treatment centers, they've tried to talk their loved one into getting help. Maybe they're estranged, they just don't know what to do. What is your message? What
Call me.
Call you?
Yeah, definitely call me and drop into Tuesday night because that's where they can let go of the breath that they're holding.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Because
get some-
they're holding their breath and they need to keep breathing deeply.
Well, I'll give you a really kind of a hot off the press kind of a deal. I talked to a wife Monday. Today's Wednesday. Monday, 5 o'clock. She called. I've got a husband and blah blah blah. And I call her back. Just say, hey, I know it's a big deal when people call. It takes a lot of courage to call. And so I gave her the whole rundown. This is what the intervention looks like. A lot of the stuff that I just shared with you. And I told her, I said, listen, here's what I recommend that you do. I said, and she told me she had faith. I said, pray about it. Just, you've got the information now, just pray about it. It can be scary, I get that, but if you get a green light in your heart, to me that means do something with it. Go talk to somebody, move forward. And 24 hours later, she called and said, we're doing it. And so, we're going to intervene on her husband, and he'll probably say yes. And so it's just, people, here's the big problem, is that most people who call, they love this person. They love this person. And we believe that when they're perfect love, there is no fear, right? So I'm just afraid of getting rejected. I'm afraid of what he might do. It's like, if you can push that away and let go of what they're going to think, say, feel, and do, because your intent is nothing but pure. You are for them, not against them. You're doing this for them, not to them. And if you can bypass that, because it's a step that has to happen, whether they say yes or no, it's a step that has to happen to get everybody to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And this moves mountains. I kid you not, this is not designed to be therapy. It's educationally and process driven, but it is more therapeutic than any day I've ever spent in treatment in 37 plus years.
Yeah.
It's just like the most, it's second to watching a child be born. That's how beautiful they are. Granted, there are times when a person acts out and it doesn't go the way we want, but there's enough education on the front end that helps them endure that
Yeah.
and get through that.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for
Chris,
having
You
us.
have a beautiful story and have a beautiful mission, and I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, likewise.
It's awesome being friends with you guys.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
All right.